Welcome to the Stronger Than Steel podcast with your host, Austin Davidson and John Keir, talking Steelers all the time. Now, here's Austin and John.
Hello, and welcome back to the Stronger Than Steel podcast. My name is John Keir. I am one of your co-hosts, and joining me as always is my other co-host, Austin Davidson.
Heyo.
It is Season 3, Episode 36. Austin, the Steelers are 0-1-1. They got taken apart at home by the Kansas City Chiefs on defense anyways, falling by a final score of 42-37. The Steelers now share the basement of the AFC North with the Cleveland Browns, and you've got the Buccaneers coming into town next week on Monday Night Football, but just, your home opener, what do you take away from this loss?
Well, the defense is bad, and there's no one thing to blame for it. The offense did good after they got going, but they still should have been able to tear apart the Chiefs' offense from the get-go. And then special teams was the worst I've ever seen it. That really sums it up in three simple sentences. How about for you? What wraps up this game for you?
It felt oddly like a carbon copy of the playoff loss to Jacksonville back in January, but once I looked back at it and thought about it some more, there were some key differences, but on the surface, it was just a very similar game. The Chiefs played very, very well offensively. They deserve a lot of credit for the way they game planned and the way they executed in this game, but the Steelers on the other side were equally as awful, and the execution was equally as terrible. There was a lot of parts that played into the Chiefs scoring as much as they did, and it was a lot of help from the Steelers on their end, and the Chiefs executed great as well, so I wanted to mention that. The special teams had bad moments too, and so did the offense. It was terrible. It was really, really bad, and the Steelers were lucky to be in the game at the end. It was ugly. As far as X Factors and our bold predictions went, Austin, I don't remember what mine were. I'll look mine up real quickly, but I do know that my X Factors were Ben Roethlisberger and Sean Davis, so I'll jump on that real quick. Davis was awful. Let's just get that right out of the way. He was absolutely terrible, just like everyone else in the secondary, and he was responsible for a few hole shots against the defense, and he was a complete non-factor. On the other side, Roethlisberger was my offensive X factor, which kind of a punt there, just picking the quarterback, but he did play well at the end of the day. There were some things he could definitely have done better. Could have run the offense faster at the end of the game. Missed on a lot of deep throws and just, a little rusty and started slow, but ultimately he played well. And then as far as my bold predictions go, I couldn't have been further off with James Conner. Last week I was pretty close with my bold prediction for him. This week I predicted 150 yards and 3 more touchdowns. He did get a rushing touchdown, but he didn't have anything else besides that. He did have a 2-point conversion, but he only ran for 18 yards this time. Davis did nothing. He had 3 tackles, so not an interception, sack, and forced fumble. And Ryan Switzer did not have a punt return for a touchdown. He barely returned anything at all, for that matter. What about you?
My closest bold prediction was the one I made for Ben, where he would have another 500-yard game, throwing 4 touchdowns and no interceptions. And it wasn't the farthest off, as he threw no interceptions, but he only threw for 452 yards and 3 touchdowns. But my other bold predictions were terrible. I said Mahomes would be bad. He wasn't. And then I said Cameron Hayward would be a wrecking ball, and he wasn't. As for my X Factors, while Vance did look solid there at times, he got 2 bad penalties on him in this game, and Jesse James took the spotlight for prime tight end performance in this one. So Vance didn't really change anything for the good. Then on defense, it was Cameron Sutton, and the entire defense got destroyed. So like everyone on defense is going to be a loser. But I don't really remember anything outrageously bad from Sutton like we saw from a lot of his teammates. He did give up a big play to Sammy Watkins that I do remember, but nothing continuous. There wasn't several from him like other teammates. But yeah.
Well, that's good. I suppose one positive was the injury report. Did you get a look at that?
Yeah, there was very few injuries at first. It looked like the Steelers came out unscathed, but today on Tomlin Tuesday, he came out and said Marcus Gilbert and Ramon Foster both are a little banged up. And the exact injuries haven't been disclosed yet. He only said they were just a little banged up. It shouldn't be anything to worry about from the way he put it, so I don't think they're going to be big injuries regardless.
All right, let's jump right into the game. The offense put up 37 points, but it wasn't a great start. Like the Jacksonville Jaguars playoff game back in January, they got off to a slow start, kind of a struggle to get the ball moving at first. In fact, their first two drives, they went backwards. So I guess what did they do wrong at first, and how did they turn it around?
Yeah, they really started slow. It was even more frustrating than seeing the defense give up 21 points so fast, in my opinion, because at least the defense could say they actually had some tough matchups, but Cheese was been bad at first. Luckily, he shook off the rust. I think that's what changed going into the second quarter and really started to light up that defense for what it was. He was aided most by Jesse James and Juju Smith-Schuster. Both had huge days in the air, combining for 18 receptions for 259 yards and 2 touchdowns. Not to mention for James, he had a 100% catch rate when targeted, which was great from him. He really played outstandingly. Brown actually had more catches than James, but really still didn't have a great day. He was targeted 17 times, only came up with 9 for 67 yards. It's not all Brown's fault. Ben's deep ball still isn't very good yet. It's the same. We're going through the same thing we saw last year. The same exact thing where Ben was having these on and off games, and he struggled to get the deep ball early. And it's really disappointing, I will say, because I'm sure the deep ball is going to get back to the way it was, just like last season, about halfway through. But, I don't understand why it's taken this long to get it that way. Is he not training enough with these guys? Is he not, understanding how fast they should go? The deep ball with Brown should really has no excuse. It should be connecting every time because Antonio Brown's been there for years. That's his number one receiver. It's just I don't know. It's frustrating. It is frustrating when Ben is missing these deep balls that we know that he can do and he's been good at in the past. But anyway, in terms of other guys with receptions, Nick's had one of my favorites, getting a 19-yard catch and run. It was really nice. It was one of the better play calls I actually saw on offense, one of my favorite ones, too, because it looked like the Steelers were all out on running it. And I don't think there was even another read. I think the only thing that was happening there was that ball was getting in Nick's hands. And I really like that because I don't think the defense would have expected that. But, yeah, I think people were sleeping on Nick's hands in the offseason. I think that catch and run shows what he is actually capable of if you get the ball in his hands. You don't see it often, but he's pretty solid with his catches. But moving on, Vance McDonald looked okay in this one. He got 3 catches for 26 yards, but penalties really hurt him in my eyes. But then finally, James Washington finally got his first catch and touchdown in this game, becoming yet another Steelers wide receiver whose first catch was a touchdown, joining the likes of Martavis Bryant, Antonio Brown, and Juju from recent times. But speaking of wideouts, though, while Darius Hayward-Bay didn't get a target in this game, something that impressed me was his blocking down the field. It happened more than once where the announcer called out Darius Hayward-Bay laying out a nice block, and I just wanted to acknowledge that before moving on to running backs. But running backs. They had a rough day on the ground in this one. James Conner only got 8 carries for 17 yards, with more than half of them coming on one 9-yard run. He did, however, get a touchdown. Then Stephen Ridley only rushed once for 2 yards, so not great from him either. They did do much better in the air, though. James Conner caught 5 passes for 48 yards and almost made an OBJ-like catch. That was incredible. He still caught it, just out of bounds. In my eyes, that's amazing still, the way he caught it. But then Ridley caught his sole target for 5 yards, so not bad in that regard. But let's finish up with O-line. The O-line did really good in pass protection in this one. There were so many plays where Ben just sat there and felt no pressure on him for several seconds. And they only gave up 1 sack and 3 quarterback hits, so not too shabby in that regard. We're going to pretend, since it didn't count, that they didn't give up that sack fumble that got called back because of a holding on the Chiefs, but it didn't happen, so I can't count it against them. But the O-line were really bad in run blocking. They allowed 5 tackles for a loss when there were only 13 rushes for the Steelers total. And you take away 2 from that because 2 of those are Ben Roethlisberger rushes. And if he's getting a rush, it's either a rush or it's a sack. So it's pretty terrible. But that really wraps it up for me, though. What do you have to say about the offense coming out of this game?
All right. Well, I went back through the game, and I just kind of made my notes, so I'll take a look here. All right, so the first drive, the Steelers start off. I really have a problem with the way the Steelers are scripting their plays early on. It's kind of something that we saw. Wouldn't you say that when Todd Haley was the offensive coordinator, the Steelers would struggle early on when the plays were scripted?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They struggle early on all the time. It always seemed like they were not doing good in the beginning. Like the Colts, for example, last year where they were down 17 very quickly.
And then a game I'm thinking of was the playoff game against the Broncos when Roethlisberger was coming off that shoulder injury. There was no Antonio Brown. That first drive was all about throwing deep and just letting the Broncos know that Roethlisberger can throw it deep. I thought that first drive was more about showing what Roethlisberger could do than it was actually moving the football and trying to, methodically score. Here's how it worked out. A deep ball to the left side to Washington that was too far in front of him, so incomplete. A bubble screen to Antonio Brown, lost a yard with a penalty on Villanueva, and then Foster beaten on a play, and it has to force the throwaway. That's a horrible start. The Chiefs go down and score. Second drive, the offensive line missed on the first play. This is the play I sent you, Austin, from Alex Kozora, where Finney and Pouncey just missed Chris Jones. He completely unblocked to Connor, no chance. A loss of 3. Screen pass to Connor for no yards. A dropped snap, Roethlisberger fires it out of bounds. So the first 6 plays, the best play was either the screen pass to James Conner for no yards or the deep pass out of bounds on the first play of the game to James Washington. Wow, that's bad. The Steelers finally got it going a little bit after that. A great contested catch by Jesse James. Roethlisberger's trusting him a lot more now than he ever used to. You already talked about it. Roethlisberger's deep ball is just not there yet, which kind of confuses me. Especially early in the game, he kept throwing it deep. He kept throwing it deep, and he wouldn't complete it. You got to stop throwing it deep. You're going to hurt the team by wasting these downs if you're going to keep throwing it deep when you haven't made them work yet. McDonald had those 2 bad penalties you touched on. They both came at killer times, especially the last one. James Conner, he was pretty good in space. He was an effective receiver in this one, even though he wasn't overly great, but he did contribute with 48 yards of his own. That was pretty nice. False start on Antonio Brown. That should never happen. I mentioned it during the game, but there should never be a false start on a wide receiver ever because they're watching the football. So the fact that he got one is just ridiculous. And he does this too. This happens like 2 to 3 times a year, and it's just absolutely ridiculous. As Austin mentioned, it really should have been 28-0, but they were lucky and bailed out with the penalty. That play would have been just ridiculous, but the Steelers were lucky there. Juju was fantastic in this game. He's still lit. The best player on the team so far through 2 weeks. Great pass protection for most of the game, especially on the first TD pass, the backpedaling throw by Roethlisberger. That was a fantastic throw and catch. A couple more plays. James was just finding the soft spot the whole time. A perfect hot read for Roethlisberger. The quick curl for James turned into 21 yards when it was 21-7. You talked about Darius Hayward-Bay. He's still the best blocking wide receiver on this team. Juju with strong hands on the second touchdown. I felt like the offensive line's pass protection actually got better throughout the game. I felt like Roethlisberger just had more and more time. He just kept waiting and waiting for something to come open. And, sooner or later it did. So I was very happy to see that. Just again with Jesse James and Ben Roethlisberger, they have this nice connection now that I just feel like it's even better now than it ever used to be. And it's I don't know if it'll get much better, but this is probably Jesse James at his best. And I just wanted to make a note of that. He played very well, and Roethlisberger did a good job finding him going through his reads. It was nice to see James Washington get his first touchdown. That was a nice improvisational play, and he looked pretty good. He did have several other catches taken away by penalty or something. Like I know one was taken away by a Steelers penalty and one by a Chiefs penalty, so he really should have had 3. You mentioned it, though. Steelers went down 21-0. Really had to give up on the ground game. Only 11 designed runs. You talked about Roethlisberger running it twice. Ridley had one, and Switzer had two for some reason. I'm convinced the Steelers are trying to get Ryan Switzer, too. It feels like every time he has the football in his hands, especially on offense, wouldn't it seem like to you, I feel like he just gets popped.
Yeah, I could agree with that. I mean, for the most part anyway. I feel like it doesn't go anywhere more than he gets popped. But, like, yeah. No, I see what you're saying.
They seem to have this weird obsession with getting him involved on the offense for some reason. I'm not sure why they're doing it this much this early, right?
It does feel weird. It does feel a little forced. I especially using him as a halfback. I feel like that's weird. I guess it's just trying to confuse people, but I don't think it's really working.
Yeah, like there have been some decent plays. He did have a run for a first down in this one, but then got blown up behind the line. So just very, very weird. There was a couple of bad 3-and-outs that the Steelers had. Okay, so, all right, yeah. The start of the second half, Chiefs go down, score a touchdown. Steelers respond, then the Chiefs score again. So it's 35-28. The Steelers have a 3-and-out. This is with Stephen Ridley in the backfield. I don't know if you remember this drive. 3 plays, and the Steelers have a pass to Ridley for 5 yards, a run for Ridley for 2 yards, and then an incomplete pass short right to Ryan Switzer, where he stopped running when he should have kept running. So why are we going to Switzer, the guy who was just recently acquired, and the backup running back for 2 plays on this drive? What's that all about?
I can't explain it. I remember that perfectly because Ryan Switzer and Ben had no idea what each other were doing. Ryan Switzer thought he was going to stop, and I don't know, just maybe turn up instead. But, like, him and Ben don't have that connection yet, and Ben thought he was just going to keep going forward where he would have been open. It probably would have been the better option. But the whole series was stupid. You don't force the ball to your backup running back twice and then try and throw to the guy that's not very experienced. Like, you got to throw to your experienced guys. You got to throw to Juju. You got to throw to excuse me. You got to throw to Antonio. You got to throw to Jesse James. All those guys. And they chose Switzer and to use Ridley. And when they already had given up on the run game early on with James Conner. And James Conner is the obviously better running back. So just really bad few plays.
Yeah, really, really bizarre. And the Steelers went 3-and-out. The Chiefs score again, and then punt again on their next drive. They're lucky they got bailed out with the safety, but then they punt again, and then they finally score. Another thing that was bizarre, and we'll get more into this later. But what was Antonio Brown complaining about to Randy Fichtner? I mean, he was getting into a screaming match with him. What was that all about? Do you think, anyways?
I had no idea. Maybe he was yelling at him because he was open, or like to try and get him, make him do a different play where he is getting more open. Something like that is my guess. What's your guess on that?
I honestly wouldn't know what to tell you. It's now a huge thing on NFL.com. They're like, what could he be upset about? And it's like, oh, he's not getting enough targets. It's like, well, he was targeted 17 times in this game. I think he got targeted enough. In fact, maybe he was targeted too much, but I mean, I don't know. I'm not sure what the cause of that was, but in any case. The one sack against Roethlisberger came at a pretty bad time. That came late in the game. I think it was the Steelers' second to last drive. Yeah, because the Steelers, it was a 2nd and 10. Roethlisberger sacked for 10 yards with 11 minutes to go, down by 12. This was after the safety. 3rd and 20, Roethlisberger gets an 18-yard pass to Antonio Brown. This was the second penalty on Vance McDonald. And then 3rd and 25, James Conner, an 18-yard pass from Roethlisberger. And then the decision to punt on a 4th and 7 from their 44. I know the Steelers had just gotten a punt pinned deep inside the 1-yard line earlier on the last drive, but Barry wasn't having a great game besides that one punt. And I think it showed as he boomed it right out of the end zone, and then you get a net of 36 yards on that play. I don't know. I really question that decision.
I thought it was stupid too. I thought that they should have just gone for it, especially you know how bad the defense has been playing too. So it's not like it's just better to probably just try and drive down and just try and get a touchdown there or get some points there. Like you said, Barry was just not doing good. And that one punt, I give it more to luck than anything. The ball took a very Steelers-like bounce. It somehow went sideways. I was confused. I looked at the ball and was like, oh, it's going into the end zone. And then it just, like, went, nah, I'm turning to the right, fam. And I was like, okay, well, I'll take it. Darius Hayward-Bay was there to make sure it went that way, but, like, it was a lucky punt, like, that drive before. So, I don't know. I feel like, especially now, like, they're literally looking – they brought in punters today because they don't trust Jordan Berry. Like, you should have already, at that point in the game, not trusted Jordan Berry. So, I don't know. I really don't know what I have to say about that.
Well, obviously, Barry's punt did go through the end zone, touchback. Chiefs do fumble 7 plays later. Steelers get the ball back with 5 minutes remaining. They do score a touchdown, but let's go over the turn of events. First play, the 44-yard pass play to Jesse James. That happens with 4 minutes and 52 seconds left. He goes down out of bounds. I just wanted to mention quickly that James will never be a Pro Bowler, but he wildly outperformed my expectations when he was originally drafted as a 5th-round pick. So congratulations to him. He keeps getting better, and I'm glad to see it. All right. So from here on, it takes 8 plays from the 20-yard line for the Steelers to get into the end zone. First play, incomplete pass, 4 minutes and 49 seconds left after that. Then a 7-yard pass to Juju inbounds with 4:42 to go. This is where I want you to pay attention. So 4:42. Next play, an incomplete pass at 4:02. It took 40 seconds, basically the entire play clock, for the Steelers to run their next play. 4th and 3. 7-yard pass to Juju with 3:56 left, so they got that one off pretty quick. Although then again, that was an incomplete pass, so I can't really give them credit for that. Incomplete pass at 3:24. So you're using most of the play clock again there. 3-yard pass to James Conner, 3:17. And then a loss of 2 on the quick inside pass to Juju at 2:42, using another 40 seconds right there. And then finally on 4th and goal, the Roethlisberger TD run with 1:59 to go. The Steelers had just under 5 minutes left in the game when they got down there. And they ended up using all the way up to the 2-minute warning, which would have been crucial, mind you, when the Steelers were to kick off again and have to stop the Chiefs. That 2-minute warning would have been crucial, especially how it played out in the end, Austin, with that final punt coming up. That 2-minute warning would have been huge. So the Steelers' clock management at the end of this game was absolutely terrible. And I don't know who you want to blame on that. If you blame the coaches or the players, I'd be willing to blame both, because the coaches got to be like, guys, get going. The players have to be able to move with some urgency too, and there was no urgency whatsoever, and it really did cost the Steelers in the end. They probably still don't win the game, but they give themselves a chance if they manage the clock better. And that above everything I saw on Sunday was the most frustrating. And that above everything with the defense, this was what made me the most upset. And I don't know if there was anything you wanted to add to that, but that's kind of my last little rant about the offense before we move to defense.
The one thing I wanted to add about that is, of that series, the one that I actually thought was the worst was that 2-yard loss to Juju. And I blame that on the players more than the coaches on that specific play, because Ben made a bad decision there to throw it to Juju in downs. There was like 3 guys right behind him waiting to stop him, because it was like a little shovel pass thing. Like it wasn't exactly a shovel pass, but it was like Juju going out like he was. I don't know how to explain it, but it was just really stupid. Ben should have just decided, hey, I'm gonna either throw this somewhere else. I'm gonna throw it. I'm gonna get out of the pocket a little more and throw it out of bounds or something like that, because they lost so much time that it kept the clock rolling. Is what I'm trying to say. It kept the clock rolling. He lost yards. It was just a bad read. And that was one of that series that bothered me the most. I was not happy with Ben's decision to throw it to Juju there. He should have read it better.
Agreed. And then again, why is that route being run in the first place? Why is it being run where he's going to be run up right up the middle, where he's most definitely not going to score going against the teeth of the defense right there? I don't get it, and it really boggles my mind how year after year the Steelers struggle with this sort of stuff, and Mike Tomlin kind of brushes it off as though, it's not a huge deal. It is a huge deal. It didn't cost the Steelers the game, but it cost them a chance to have one more opportunity. That's insanity to me. That's ridiculous. Oh man, and now comes the fun part. We didn't even get to the fun part yet. We get to talk about all the wonderful things the defense did and didn't do on Sunday, and they just 6 touchdowns against by Patrick Mahomes, the only other quarterback to toss 6 TDs against the Steelers defense. He's in the Hall of Fame, Jim Kelly of the Buffalo Bills. Ouch. Where do you even want to start with this one?
Let's start with coaching. Let's just say at first that the defensive scheme is bad, like really bad. Last year, we thought it was the players' fault that plays weren't being communicated properly. Well, now with 2 guys who did that for their past defenses, now out there for the Steelers, them being Burnett and Bostic, you can now tell that it's obviously either too confusing or just something is going wrong with the actual scheme that is being presented. Keith Butler needs to either simplify it. There's actually been reports that you actually brought up to me that it's too simple. I don't know what's wrong with it. There's something wrong with it and needs to be fixed. It's just, there's way too much talking and figuring out things prior to the snap. That shouldn't happen. There shouldn't be these communication issues. And you now see what the problem is. What has changed from last year to this year and what stayed constant? That's Keith Butler. Keith Butler is still there. While the defense has shifted around a little bit, Keith Butler is still there. So, Butler's on the hot seat after this terrible defensive performance, as he is, in my opinion, the main reason the defense can't stop anything that's better than absolute trash. But talking about the actual game, I said I was worried about Tyreek Hill going in and not Kelsey or Watkins, and boy, did it smack me right in the face. Not that Hill did bad. Hill actually finished with a pretty good stat line, but he was the 3rd leading receiver in this game behind Kelsey and Watkins. Tyreek Hill really wasn't that big of a deal in this game until really the second half, but let's get into talk about Kelsey and Watkins. The Steelers still can't cover a tight end running up the seam to save their life. It doesn't matter. Kelsey destroyed them on that. Both safeties were just too slow and decided to move over to him. And it's just really disappointing. And there's just the cornerbacks and linebackers aren't fast enough, or whoever's lined up against Kelsey. I think on both of them that it happened, it was linebackers. I know for a fact one of them at least was. They're not fast enough to keep up with Kelsey. They're not coverage guys. Bostic and Vince Williams are not coverage guys. They're not good in that situation. And then when the safeties are too slow, there's nothing stopping it. Your safeties are not being safeties. They're not being the coverage blanket that you need in case your linebackers can't do what you're asking them to do, which they can't. This is the problem. Now let's wrap this back. This is the problem with Keith Butler. Keith Butler is asking these guys to do this stuff when they're not good at doing it. The safeties are the problem in the back, but with the linebackers, like, these linebackers are not good for this kind of stuff. It's just... And Butler just keeps forcing it, just accepting, like, okay, one of these days they're going to get a stop. No, that's not how to do it. But in terms of Watkins, I don't even know what happened. I can't explain how Watkins was open so much in this game. He's not even that good. It was just super disappointing to see. I saw Sutton get burnt at least once in this one by Watkins. I saw Artie Burns get burned by Watkins. It was so bad. I don't understand. I was really upset with that. But moving on, let's talk about some Steelers players. The Steelers' defensive line played terribly. Simple as that. They weren't disruptive at all in this one, and besides the forced fumble, Cameron Hayward did nothing in this one. Well, really, the only guy to do anything on the line was Big Dan with the bull rush. So, like, seriously, Big Dan? Dan McCullers, the guy that going into the offseason we said was a sure thing to get cut? Tua and Hayward need to play better. It's simple as that. They're supposed to be the veterans on the team, the great ones on the team. I mean, maybe not to it. Hayward's supposed to be better, but now let's talk about pass rushing. Well, there's not really much to talk about because there was no pass rushing. It was non-existent. When Bud Dupree doesn't play against an undrafted free agent rookie in his first game, you can see Dupree can't do anything as a pass rusher. I am willing to call him a more athletic Jarvis Jones at this point. That's literally it. He can't pass rush. He can be fast and do fast things like speed. Like, that's literally it. He's good at speed. Like, does that sentence even make sense? He's good at speed. He's not a good linebacker. He's fast and he's athletic. And I'm going to go on a rant for a second here because I don't remember if we talked about it last podcast or I just addressed you about it. The Steelers have a problem with drafting these guys that need to be developed. They're just athletic freaks, and they need to be developed, and the Steelers don't develop them. And that's Dupree. That's Jarvis Jones. That's Artie Burns. That is what Terrell Edmonds looked like coming out. I mean, Edmonds has plenty of time to prove me wrong here, but Edmonds was so raw. Like we said pre-draft, I gave him a 4th-round grade because he was raw. And that's how Artie Burns was coming out. Artie Burns was not supposed to go as a first-rounder. No one projects him as a first-rounder. He was raw. Bud Dupree wasn't as raw, but Bud Dupree was mostly drafted because of his athletic ability. And you just see these mistakes being made. You can see that these guys aren't very good when they come to play. They got the speed, they got their athletic abilities, but they're just not good. But anyway, T.J. Watt was mostly a non-factor in this one as well, only getting 2 tackles, being the first one to slow down Kareem Hunt on the safety. But other than that, he didn't do anything either. Can I ask you a question, though? Do you know who was actually credited with the safety? I don't actually know. Was it Morgan Burnett?
I actually think it was Artie Burns. Artie Burns is the one that finished him off.
Okay, so it was Artie Burns. All right, I forgot to look up that. I was supposed to look it up. But in this one, there were only 3 tackles for a loss, other than the sack McCullers got, and that's absolutely putrid when the Chiefs' offensive line was nothing to write home about. I mean, they're not terrible. They're just middle of the pack, but I was just beyond disappointed with the play in this game. But possibly nobody played worse than the defensive back. Artie Burns has returned to being bad. What a shocker. He was absolutely terrible in this one. Mike Hilton was bad, which was uncharacteristic. Terrell Edmonds both looked lost, and directly gave up a touchdown because he couldn't make an open field tackle that he has to make. He has to make that tackle. But Davis was slow moving to get into coverage. They were all terrible. They didn't even have a pass breakup between all of them in this game. Not a single one. The only one with a pass breakup in this game was Stephon Tuitt. That's it. The only good thing I can even say about them is Morgan Burnett led the team in tackles and contributed on a tackle for a loss. But I really have nothing else good to say. Like that's really it. Like, and I'm not saying Morgan Burnett did good. He just led the team in tackles. Like, okay. Like that's really all I have to say about the defense. They were bad in this one. It's simple as that. What do you have to say about the defense in this game?
Well, I think you covered it pretty well, but the Steelers had miscommunication issues all over the friggin' field. It was bad. There was not very much positive to go from here. First touchdown, the slant to, I believe it was, who caught the first touchdown?
Chris Conley.
Chris Conley, yes. His one of 2 catches on the day. Conley inside on Artie Burns, and right away you see Artie Burns throw his hands up afterward saying, "Where was my help at?" And he was signaling to Mike Hilton. If you look on the replay, Mike Hilton does something else. I don't know what Mike Hilton's doing there, but he is not doing the right thing. He was supposed to help inside, and he didn't. So Burns got beat inside and looked like a real McIdiot on that play because he didn't get the help he was supposed to get, which leads to an easy touchdown. Miscommunication count number 2. Watkins blows past Cameron Sutton. There's no help over the top from Sean Davis. Just like another hole shot over the cover 2. Whether that's on Sutton for not carrying further down the field past Watkins or for Davis for not coming over sooner. Either way, somebody messed up. Mahomes has an arm and it's great, A couple of hole shots up the seam, but the Steelers' pass rush didn't do anything to help themselves out on this one. They really just, as you said, it was just completely non-existent. Just, it was bad. It was like every play they were getting taken apart, and it wasn't like a lot of these plays. It was like they were going down the field 10, 11 play drives. No, these were short drives. These were 2 plays, 5 plays, 6 plays. 5 plays, 7 plays, 5 plays. Look at this. And, the other thing that's frustrating is the drives. You just think about it. First 3 drives to the Chiefs. Touchdown, touchdown, touchdown. First 3 drives of the second half. Touchdown, touchdown, touchdown. You're really not giving your team much of a chance to win when you're doing stuff like that. And it's just, oh, man. Travis Kelce up the seam 2 separate times. Linebackers pretty much doing what they can, even if they chip block him on the way up. Vince Williams, John Bostic. As you mentioned, they're really not athletically enough equipped to do something like that. You know who is, though, Austin? Do you know who is?
Who?
Matthew Thomas. Just putting a feeler out there. Matthew Thomas.
Oh.
Just putting a feeler out there. Wondering if we're going to see him play at all anytime soon, if they're going to keep throwing middle linebackers out on those kinds of ridiculous matchups. I mean, what? You want 2 guys that are considered 2-down linebackers or average cover guys at best to run toe and toe with, a top 5, maybe top 3 tight end in the NFL. Are you out of your mind? Apparently you are, because that's what you ask your linebackers to do on defense, and naturally they got torched by a guy who can fit the ball in there like Patrick Mahomes. What else? Missed tackles on the Watkins jet sweep that turned into 31 yards. Terrell Edmonds he looked like a rookie on that touchdown pass to Kareem Hunt, stiff-armed, and, welcome to the NFL moment. I'm not going to rip him too terribly much for that, but he's got to be better. That's a good teachable moment. The only sack of the day, pressure by Tuitt on the outside, forces Mahomes to step up into a sack by Dan McCullers. If he didn't do that, or if Mahomes decided to throw it anyways, which he probably could have, Tyreek Hill was wide open down the middle of the field. That would have been a touchdown. So the Steelers are very lucky that they got that sack there, because that would have been 6. What else? John Bostic had a nice tackle for a loss. It's one of the few plays I remember them making. Tyreek Hill, you mentioned that he had a kind of a quiet first half. That's because he wasn't targeted in the first half. And right away, the first play of the second half, where do they go? Tyreek Hill for 36 yards on Artie Burns. Burns gets his hands on him as soon as Hill catches it, but Hill breaks away from Burns because Burns can't tackle him for some reason and sprints away for several more yards. So that's terrible. And then 2 plays later, Patrick Mahomes finds Travis Kelce for 13 yards, and then Travis Kelce from 25 yards out, a bullet for another touchdown. So that's also terrible. And then I'm going to talk to you about Bud Dupree. You talked about him as a more athletic Jarvis Jones. Well, I don't remember Jarvis Jones making unforced mental errors like this. 2 offsides penalties at very non-crucial times to be jumping the snap, like a 2nd and 15 or 2nd and 18. I can't remember. Why would you jump offsides then? Do you really need to rush the quarterback that well then? I mean, it's one thing if it's like, a 3rd and 6 or something like that, I guess, but like, that's just ridiculous. I hate that. He had as many offsides penalties in this game as he did tackles with 2, and that's just embarrassing on so many fronts. Artie Burns clearly and egregiously beat on the 6th and final touchdown by Tyreek Hill. It just looked like an all-state wide receiver running past the kid playing JV in his first start or something like that. It was so bad. So bad. The safety drive, the first play of the game, or the first play of that drive, Tyreek Hill was open down, running down the right sideline, and Mahomes could have hit him, and that could have been a touchdown. So that's good. Watt and Burns teamed up for the nice safety. That was one of the few plays the defense made. They both did a good job, Watt getting the initial penetration, and then Burns finishing him off. So that was nice, but then again, that was really all they did. The Chiefs weren't great on the ground. This is another thing that's really frustrating. the Chiefs didn't run the ball a lot, but when they ran the ball, they were effective, especially when they needed to, meaning like third downs or at the end of the game when they were trying to run out the clock. The second to last drive, Kareem Hunt had a 16-yard rush. And then on the last drive, the first and 10, Steelers are going to use their timeouts. Hunt runs for 9 yards. And then gets a first down on the next play. Whoop-de-doo. Way to go. What else were they going to do? So that was just terrible. Another positive, though, the forced fumble by Hayward and Chickalo on the fumble recovery. They both had fantastic efforts. But on the negative side, that never should have happened because the Steelers missed 3 tackles on the play prior to that. So that's bad. That's also bad. That's just, and you think about the final stats of the day. Patrick Mahomes missed on 5 passes. He only threw the ball 28 times. The Chiefs had less than 60 plays on offense, and Roethlisberger threw the ball 60 times. What if they had had the ball for as many plays as the Steelers had? What would the score be? I mean, how many times, I'm going to go through the play-by-play right now. How many drives the Chiefs had? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. They had 12 drives. They scored touchdowns on half of them. The other drives were the end of the game, a fumble after they had been moving the ball, a safety, 1 punt, 2 punts, the end of the half, and it looks like that's it. Wow. I don't know what else to say. Is there anything else you wanted to add?
No, really. There isn't. They're just bad, and they should feel bad, the Steelers defense.
Does the special teams have a reason to feel bad? And yes, I know they do.
Oh, yeah. This is probably the worst special teams performance I can remember that I have seen from the Steelers. Like, I honestly, it's hard for me to say that there's been a worse one on all fronts of special teams. The only way it could have been worse is if Tyreek Hill ran a punt back for a touchdown, but the Steelers didn't let that happen as they lived in their fears instead and made Barry punt to the sidelines. And to be honest, they might as well let Hill run one back with how short the punts were. With how short the punts were and the first punt return by Anthony Thomas bringing it back 48 yards anyway, even though it was on the sideline. That play was outrageously stupid. Roosevelt Nix was the only person to have an understanding what was going on. L.J. Fort, lost. Everyone else, lost. Rosie Nix was the only one that saw that DeAnthony Thomas was getting the ball and not Tyreek Hill. And something I want to wrap back to, I don't understand why the Steelers were living in their fears of punting it to Tyreek Hill. The last time that the Steelers faced the Chiefs, Tyreek Hill didn't do anything as a returner. And he's always been great. They were good. They have a good coverage team. Like, you got to just let Barry bunt it down the middle. And just because he doesn't have a good leg already, his directional punting isn't that great. So why are you going to make him punt to the sideline when they're just going to be short kicks? Just let the coverage team take down Hill instead of being afraid that, he might rip off a big one. Is that how you're going to play? You're going to play like a scared little wuss? Like, you're just, Hill might run one back on us. Put some trust in your coverage team. You put more trust in the defense than the coverage team in this one. Like, how are you going to tell me that the defense deserves the trust at the end of the game where the Chiefs have just lit them up all the time, and you're not even going to let the special teams try. You're not even going to let them try when in the past they did fine against him, and that pissed me off. But Barry wasn't the only kicking problem in this one. What is going on with Chris Boswell? He was Mr. Automatic last season, and now, after receiving his big extension, hasn't hit a field goal yet this year. The Steelers have yet to get a field goal. He missed from 49 yards, and then he also missed an extra point. But almost all his extra points looked close. All his extra points looked closer than they needed to be. They were all drifting far close to the edges. It's just like, what happened? This is cause for concern at this point. He needs to fix it ASAP. Finally, Ryan Switzer looks bad out there as well, having his longest kick return go for 24 yards on 4 kick returns. And he also only had 1 punt return for 6. Just a horrible day on all fronts of special teams. Do you have anything to add?
Jeez. I don't know. I don't know if there's really much. There is some more to say, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. I'm just thinking about this. The first punt of the game, the Steelers lined up with, or the Chiefs lined up with 2 return men. Obviously, DeAnthony Thomas was the guy returning it. Do you think the Chiefs thought the Steelers might do those directional short punts and had him up there just in case for something like what happened to happen?
I personally think it was just an accident. I really just think it was accidental, and it just happened to work out that way for the Chiefs.
I feel like they planned that. I don't know if they expected Thomas to get it, but I feel like they had him back there in the event there was a short kick, and I just, whatever happened, it worked. It was very good for them. Nix, you mentioned, was the only guy that saw the play happening. He then missed a tackle, so wow, that sucks. You can't give your defense that has the tough matchups this week 20 yards to defend on the first opening drive of the game. You can't do that. That was just terrible. More short punts from Jordan Berry. He was terrible. I will forever believe that the Steelers made the wrong decision cutting Matt Weil, who outperformed Berry. Can't stress this enough. He outperformed him in every game. And yes, Berry had pretty solid numbers on the day, but he had a crazy touchback when he shouldn't have had one, and I felt like he was kind of lucky on his one inside the 20. He was not very good. Not very good at all. More penalties on special teams. There was one in particular that really frustrated me. But before I get to that, you talked about Chris Boswell. He's got to be better. He missed 3 field goals and 2 extra points all of last year. So you're talking about 5 kicks in total. He's already missed 3 this year. 3 kicks in total he's already missed in the first 2 weeks of the season. I talked about this before. I have no reason to believe he won't break out of his funk, but there's a reason I always get nervous when kickers get signed to anything more than like a 3-year deal, and it's because kickers can go bad instantly. And if Boswell doesn't turn it around quick, I really don't know what the Steelers are going to do. That could be really bad if this is what happens. And I'm sure he'll break out of it, but this is a prime example of why you don't give kickers long-term deals, super long anyways, because of something like this. They could flip on a dime. Switzer has to start letting some of these kickoffs go. He doesn't have to return all of them. Some of them, he's usually a pretty good decision maker, but on Sunday he was not. I was not very impressed with what I saw from him. What else? Oh yeah, here's what I wanted to talk about. The safety. So the Steelers are now behind 42-30. I'm sure you remember this. Antonio Brown returns the safety punt to the Steelers' 47-yard line. Great field position. Taken back by a penalty on Stephen Ridley for lining up incorrectly. Let me ask you, this has to do with the new kickoff rules and with the safety punt not being something that's practiced very often. Who do you put more of the blame on here? Do you put it more on Ridley for lining up incorrectly, or do you blame Danny Smith, the special teams coordinator, for not going over this with his players more? Because clearly he didn't know what to do.
I blame Danny Smith, and I say that because of something that in preseason that happened. In preseason, can you guess how many special team snaps Stephen Ridley got?
0?
That would be correct. He got 0 special team snaps. So why is he even out there in the first place? Why is there not someone else that could take his place that actually has gotten special teams reps? Like, he's inexperienced at the spot. Why are you putting him there? You're literally setting him up to fail. It's a stupid penalty, don't get me wrong. Maybe you literally told him just to stand in the right spot and don't do anything else. But, I think it's stupid to put him out there, and I put most of the blame on Danny Smith for that one. How about you?
I agree, although I didn't know that, so my original thought was you should have coached these guys up, at least given them an idea. You should have done more in practice to have them know that, okay, you have to line up here, because that was a huge penalty. The Steelers, instead of having the ball right around midfield down by 12, have to get a re-kick. And this is another blunder by Switzer here. That punt, it looks to me like it's going out of bounds, doesn't it? The second one?
Yeah.
And Switzer inexplicably fields it. He gets tackled, I forget what it was. He returns at 6 yards. I think it was 6 yards, or maybe it was a kickoff return. But in any case, Switzer doesn't return it far. I think he's at like his own 25 or 50. I can't remember exactly. But what I do know is that if you let that ball roll out of bounds, here's the rule. It's not like kickoffs where you get the ball at the 40-yard line. You get the ball 30 yards from the spot that it was kicked out of bounds. So, Austin, I need to check this, but let me think about this for a second. 30. Okay, so the ball went out of bounds at the 15, or would have gone out of bounds at the 15, roughly. If that happens, you get it 30 yards further than you would have gotten it where it rolled out of bounds. So it went out of bounds at the 50. Where would that put the Steelers if that penalty had been called and enforced?
The Steelers 45.
Which is 2 yards away from where Antonio Brown returned that original punt. And that is really all I need to tell you about how crucial of a mistake that second one was by Ryan Switzer. And the Steelers ended up punting on that drive, but maybe they don't if they're that much closer to the end zone. So 2 blunders by Ridley and, Danny Smith and Ryan Switzer really cost the Steelers there. Just awful. You really just so much bad all around, and I really wish I could say more positive things, especially when your team puts up 37 points, but just there was not a lot good going on. Even, the punt with the Steelers were driving, I forget which drive, 4th and 7 with less than 10 minutes to go, down by 12 from your own, 43-yard line. The Steelers decided to punt, and that's when Barry boomed it out of the end zone. You remember the play I'm talking about?
Yep, I do.
Just capped off a terrible, terrible sequence of events there, and it just summed up the day, really.
Yep, terrible. Just terrible.
Well, with that being said, let's move on to our awards segment. So I'll jump right into the big stop of the week. The big defensive play for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Really, there was only one to choose from this week, so it made it nice and easy for me. Cam Hayward's forced fumble and Chicolo's recovery at the end of the game, only because it's the only play that makes any sense. No one else did anything of any note. Dan McCullers had a sack, but it wasn't like he broke his way into the backfield and got a sack, and that was early in the game. So that's it. That's the big stop of the week. Who is the player of the week?
For his 13 catches for 121 yards and a touchdown, the Strongman and Field player of the week had to be Juju. He was forced to be reckoned with in this one. He's looking like better and better every day when he was apparently supposed to have a sophomore slump. Well, again, Juju did not get the memo about having to have a sophomore slump, and being lit AF is not holding him back. So he is my stronger than steel player of the week.
Austin, I'm going to let this one be completely up to you. So what do you see being the best play from this game, the play of the game, if you will?
So when the Steelers were down 21-0, I really enjoyed the first touchdown that Jesse James got, because I felt like it was classic Ben. They literally said, they called it vintage Ben. Ben escaped out the pocket. Then I thought it was going to be an interception. I couldn't see what it looked like down the field when he was doing it, but I saw him throwing off his back foot while backing up, backpedaling, but somehow he got the ball to Jesse James and for a touchdown, and I was really happy with it. So that is going to be the Stronger and Steel player of the game. Jesse James' first touchdown when Roethlisberger was backpedaling.
All right, let's wrap this recap up with grades. We're going to go quickly, position by position. Quarterback, Ben Roethlisberger finished 39 of 60, 452 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks, 1 sack for 10 yards. How did they do, quarterbacks?
I gave them a B+. It was close to an A-, but that first quarter of play was just too terrible, and his deep ball still isn't there. So there's that. What do you give them?
Completely agree, B+ for the exact same reasons. On to running backs. Not a great day for them, but they still contributed in other areas. What did you think about the running back position?
I'm going to give them a C. I originally had a C minus, but it's not really their fault that the Steelers had to give up on the run early. But still, they weren't good on the few snaps they got while they were rushing. But they didn't do much better in the air, and James Conner continues to improve his pass blocking. So there's that. What do you give them?
I gave them a B minus because the Steelers, as you mentioned, abandoned the running game early on. James Conner's last carry of the game came midway through the third quarter. The third quarter, mind you. This grade is weighed more impactfully based on how they did in pass protection and catching the ball as opposed to running the ball because they only had 11 designed runs, as I said before, as opposed to 61 passes if you include the drop back sack. So I think Conner and Ridley did a pretty good job. Conner especially through the air, but as you mentioned, the running game was practically non-existent. Conner did have a nice touchdown run, though, so B minus for the running backs. Wide receivers, what do you see from this group? It was kind of a mixed bag.
Yeah, I'm going to give them a B plus. And it's mostly on the shoulders of Juju because Juju had some great plays on this one. But other than that, there was a lot left to be desired. Brown caught a lot of balls, but he only got 67 yards, and it was on 17 targets. So it's really disappointing to see. Washington only got one technical catch in this one as well. Granted, it was a touchdown, but I want more from him as well. And then Ryan Switzer only got one catch here as well for a 14-yard gain. But still, you want to see more from the other guys. What do you give the wide receivers here?
I'll give them a B, again, mostly because of Juju. He was fantastic this week. But Antonio Brown's just been all right. And James Washington had a touchdown, but he really only factored in on one play. DHB was the only other guy I saw out there. So just not a whole lot from the receiving group in this one. Tight ends, though. Tight ends were a different story, weren't we? We actually got to see two tight ends contribute, and that's the first time we've seen Mr. Vance McDonald for a long time.
Yeah, it has been a long time. I'm going to give the tight ends an A. If this was just Jesse James, it would have been an A+, but Vance got some bad penalties in his first game back. They still both combined for a lot of yards, though, and I'm not going to take that away from them, so they still get an A. What do you give the tight ends?
Yeah, McDonald had an up-and-down game. He did look good on the passes he caught, but, again, those two penalties he had were killers. It was nice to see him out there again, though. And then you mentioned it already. Jesse James, what more can you say? He was fantastic all game long, and just really encouraging to see that. So I gave the tight ends an A-. Offensive line, kind of a rough start, but they kind of righted the ship later on and played surprisingly well given the struggles they had last week, wouldn't you say?
Oh, yeah. It's almost like they flipped. I'm giving them a B-. They had great pass protection in this game when they had bad pass protection last game, but that run protection in this one was terrible. And like in the other game, it was good. So it's funny how it flip-flopped, but this is back to normal pretty much. I had them at C+ at first, but the Steelers passed way more than they ran, so the pass blocking weighed heavier for me in my evaluation, so I give them a B-. What do you give them?
For that exact reason, I'm giving it an A-, just because, again, 11 designed runs as opposed to 61 dropbacks. You think about the fact that Ben Roethlisberger was sacked one time, that's insane. You give guys 61 chances to rush the quarterback, you get to him one time. That's a really discouraging, from the other side, I mean, that's a really discouraging thing to see. You had 61 chances to get to the quarterback and you got to him one time. I know the Chiefs didn't always bring the house or anything, but man, that's fantastic. Those guys deserve a round of applause for the struggles they had last week and coming out with a purpose this week in pass protection. Again, not great in run blocking, so it's going to factor into the grade a bit, but I was happy with what I saw, so they get an A-. Now we get to the fun part. This is probably the easiest defense to grade ever, but defensive line, let's just start with them.
I'm going to give them a D. It was really close to a D- for me, but since they're the only position that actually got an explosive play, and I call it explosive, it wasn't really, neither of them were really explosive, but they got the Dan McCullers sack, and the Cameron Hayward forced a fumble, which kept them above just barely. It barely kept them above a D-. What did you give them?
I gave them an F. They were terrible. No pass rush. No push in the passing game besides one play where McCullers was gift-wrapped a sack. Hayward's forced fumble was a result of missed tackles, 3 to be exact, Doesn't save them, especially when the Chiefs ran the ball with ease, especially when it mattered most. They get an F, and it's pretty easy. Linebackers, I'm going to jump right into this one, Austin. I gave them a D-, and to be honest with you, I didn't hate most of the linebackers' play because I felt like they were put in positions where they weren't going to succeed, like Vince Williams and John Bostic covering Travis Kelce up the seam, or TJ Watt trying to cover a guy in Sammy Watkins who has fantastic speed. Why would you do that? Those are questions we really don't have the answer to, but in any case, that was frustrating. The scheme hurt them and put them in bad situations, but Bud Dupree, oh my God, I was most disappointed with him. He had as many tackles on the day as he did offsides penalties, as I mentioned earlier. He clapped back at some dude on Twitter who criticized him, and, way to go. Just thumbs up. You were more active on Twitter than you were in the game. Way to go. D- for the linebackers. Way to go.
I'm going to agree with you. I gave them a D- as well. They just didn't do much at all in this game. They didn't get many tackles. They didn't have a big play. But Dupree got penalized twice for being offside because he's bad and can't pass rush, and the only way he can try and get a pass rush is if he gets an early start. So easy D- for me.
What about defensive backs? They also had a horrible day.
Oh, yeah. This is the only position for the defense I'm giving an F. The good guys were doing bad, and the not-so-good guys were doing worse. Artie Burns got burnt so many times. Cameron Sutton got worked a little bit. And Mike Hilton just didn't look the same out there. Then the safeties were slow to get around, and Terrell Edmonds gave up a bad touchdown. So, F. Just the defensive back play in this game was terrible. I hope Joe Hayden is back next week when we face Deshaun Jackson and Mike Evans. Jesus. What do you give them?
I actually think that Edmonds was responsible for 2 touchdowns. The second Kelce touchdown, I believe it was the second Kelce touchdown, Edmonds was slow to react, and he was wide open. But any case, I can't give them an F-, but if I could, I would. They definitely earned it. I saw nothing positive from this group a single time, not a single thing. They did their jobs just well enough on one play for me to be like, okay, they didn't suck there. Way to go. They missed tackles. They missed assignments. Thank God they weren't playing a guy making his 3rd career start or anything like that, because that would have been, if they were doing that, oh man, it would have been bad. Specialists.
That would have been so embarrassing.
It would have been something for sure. I guarantee you it doesn't get better with the specialists, though, because it was a horrible day for them, too.
Oh, yeah. F. Just F. Jordan Berry's bad. Chris Boswell's currently going through something. The coverage team gave up a big return. And Ryan Switzer had 4 bad kick returns. Can there really be much worse than this, John?
To answer your question, yes, it can. Like the penalties and unforced errors. Like Switzer fielding the punt instead of letting it go out of bounds. We just talked about that. Or Stephen Ridley lining up incorrectly the play before to take away a great return. Or the first punt of the game when DeAnthony Thomas ran down the sideline practically untouched, unmolested down the field. Rosie Nix, the only person alive on that play apparently, missed a tackle too. Or the last punt of the game where they roughed the kicker and ended the game. So just all around terrible. So an F. It does get worse, to answer your question. And then last but not least, the coaches. Do we spare them from this?
No. They also get a pretty bad grade. I gave them a D+. The offensive coaching was great. They bounced back, and they were calling plays that got guys open. But the defense is what the Steelers lost. The play calls were bad, and the guys were constantly confused. Also, way too many penalties in this one on both sides of the ball. I put that on coaches as well. So I give them a D+. What do you give them?
I'll give them an F. And you already talked about the defense, so I won't repeat. But Mike Tomlin, another terrible performance for his team. 12 more penalties, like 12 penalties the week before. The clock management, as I talked about at the end of the game, was horrendous and cost the Steelers a chance to tie the game or win the game. And the offensive coaching I actually do have a problem with, because the first 2, sometimes 3 drives are run with scripted plays that you map out over the course of the week. I guess you can blame the players for not executing, but man, they were bad. The plays were bad. We talked about this. It was like they were trying to show Ben could throw the ball instead of showing that we can move the ball, and it hurt the Steelers because all of a sudden you're looking at a 21-0 hole. So you're coming out with a terrible set of scripted plays, and it puts you behind the eight ball. So yeah, Randy Fichtner and the offensive coaches deserve criticism as well. So because I had to criticize all the coaches, the special teams, defense, clock management, head coach, just all around terrible. They all deserve a failing grade. You get an F. You get an F. Everybody gets an F. So way to go. Another fantastically disappointing performance, and I'm sure you can hear the anger in my voice. Another F for the coaches. So just way to go. Terrible. All right, winners and losers from last week's game. I guess offense shouldn't be too much of a problem, but I'll be interested to see who your defensive winner is, because I don't know if there's any that earned it. But let's hear it.
On offense, it's going to be Jesse James. Holy cow, did Jesse James had quite the day. An interesting stat is that Heath Miller, in his 168 games he played, had never gotten that many yards in a game. Not saying that Jesse James is better than Heath Miller, but it's just something to think about, that Jesse James actually has a stat that's better than Heath Miller's. But he did really well, and I'm actually really proud of him. He's somehow very slippery when Ben does Ben stuff, like roll out of the pocket and extend the play. He always seems to get open on that type of play. And we're seeing this new connection between him and Jesse James, that when Ben is in trouble, Jesse James is going to be that guy and somehow slips past the defense. We saw that a lot in this game, and I like it. I'm down for it. As for defense, it was hard to pick someone, but I'm going to pick Dan McCullers. And who would have thought that Dan McCullers would have had the only sack for the Steelers in this game? He's the only one I could call a winner, and it was gift wrapped to him. But, still, even though it was gift wrapped to him, he's a backup, and he shouldn't have been the one with a sack in this game. He shouldn't have been the only one that I could say did something good in this game. How about you? Who are your winners in this game?
Mine on offense is Juju Smith-Schuster. He was too lit for some of the Pittsburgh media this summer and earned their criticism throughout the preseason and training camp. Talks of a sophomore slump were around, and yet here he has been this team's best player through 2 weeks. Juju is lit AF. On defense, really nobody deserves to be mentioned here, but you know what? I'm going to be nice today. I'm going to give it to Anthony Chickillo. Chickillo didn't play a whole lot in this game, and when he did play, he didn't do a whole lot, but he had a fantastic effort on that fumble recovery, and you know what? I'm going to give it to him this time. Anthony Chickillo is my winner, and you know what? Would he have been worse than Bud Dupree on that side? I don't think so. I don't think it would have been any different. As a matter of fact, I actually think he would have been better, because I don't think Anthony Chickillo would have been caught offsides twice in one game. So Anthony Chickillo, you actually might be better than Bud Dupree right now. Should he play?
I just can't wait for a Daney to get back, bro. I just can't wait for a Daney to get back and to win that position. 2 games into him returning from IR. This is what's going to happen.
Woo! Steelers could be going edge rusher first round next year. I kind of hope they don't, but they might have to. But that's a long ways from today, so let's move on to our losers. So who are your losers today?
On offense, it's James Conner rushing. Of course, it came up. Bell's success on the ground against the Chiefs, which is annoying, but it came up because the Steelers just couldn't get anything going on the ground. And essentially, they had to give up on it when they were down 21-0. So I picked James Conner specifically for rushing for that. And then on defense, while they are all losers in my opinion, in terms of how I expected a guy to play with how they actually performed, I was most disappointed in Mike Hilton. I watched 2 guys break tackles on him, and I just expect more from him at this point. You also pointed out that Artie Burns looked at him first when that first touchdown was given up. He's just supposed to be one of the few on defense that doesn't do bad. It's just very depressing when the good guys do bad. Not that Mike Hilton had the worst performance on defense today, not today, on Sunday. It's just he disappointed me the most. So on offense and defense, who disappointed you the most?
On offense, it was Antonio Brown. He threw a hissy fit on the sideline for some reason, and he got 17 targets. Is that not enough for him? And how about he catches some more? And yes, I know not all of them were catchable, but he's clearly not been himself the last 2 weeks, and he's got to get it together. Yelling at your offensive coordinator and causing a scene is not the way to do it. And then my loser on defense is Bud Dupree, and I'm not going to keep talking about him. I've already mentioned plenty about what I want to say about what I think about his performance. Anything else you want to add on this game?
Nope. I'm not looking forward to next game, that's for sure.
Steelers news. Where do you even want to start with this?
Well, I mean, I guess the big news is that on Monday, yesterday, a former Steelers employee tweeted out, AB needs to thank his lucky stars because he was drafted by a team that had Ben, and Ben got AB paid. You know darn well he wouldn't put up those numbers for other teams. That's an exact quote. And AB's reply was, trade me. Let's find out. And that was already drama in itself. But on Tuesday, the next day, news broke that he didn't even show up for work on Monday. So he tweeted that out on Monday, wasn't at the Steelers facility, but later Brown's agent said he was dealing with a personal matter. That hasn't been disclosed, but apparently he had something come up. But still, what do you think about all this?
It's just another example of why social media is such a mess, and you have to be really careful about what you tweet about. And I'm going to actually blame both people here. Because, first of all, a former Steelers employee, why are you tweeting something like that? AB needs to thank his lucky stars because he was drafted by a team that had Ben Roethlisberger. Roethlisberger got AB paid. Okay, fair enough. Usually it is the quarterback that makes the receiver. But I would take serious. If I'm Antonio Brown, I'm very much upset about that, and I understand why that would piss him off like that. You really have no right to say something like that. AB has put in the work, as you know. He's the hardest working, maybe player in all of football. Right up there with Tom Brady, and I can understand and appreciate why Brown was upset. Now, the way he responded was not smart at all, saying trade me, let's find out. He has to know that that's going to open up a can of worms, but he's clearly not thinking about that. And it's made a firestorm, an excrement storm, a crap storm. Just everything that's gone wrong with this team, from Bell to the struggles this year. And just already all of that, and then you throw this on top. It's like throwing gasoline on top of a fire. And it's really not something that the team needed to deal with. And it's really not something I want to deal with right now personally, and I'm sure you would agree with me.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I agree with you perfectly, actually, that both sides are at fault. But I think that I don't know what Brown was thinking when he replied. I really am confused. Like, first of all, you're supposed to ignore it, but I understand why he didn't, because that would piss me off that a former employee was saying that about me, too. But, like, why... Maybe he didn't realize he was a former employee or something. That's my best guess, is why he would say, trade me, instead of going after him, like, just for saying that. Like, I mean, I'm not saying that, oh, yeah, AB should have just roasted him instead. Like, he shouldn't have done anything. If we were in the best case scenario, Antonio Brown should have just ignored it and moved on. But, like, to say trade me, like, why? Why would you say trade me? Like, just even if it's like sarcastic or what, you're just mad and you're saying it, like, just, I would have rather him did what Bud Dupree did and just go at him in the DMs and said, I mean, it came out anyway, but, like, still, just don't say things that you, like, don't mean. It's stupid. It's not smart, and I don't know. That's what I think of it. This has been a mess. The Steelers haven't made it, like, more than a few days without something dramatic happening, whether it be Bell, whether it be Brown saying something, whether it be Ben. It's just always the dramatics keep on going and going.
And Austin, I know that we've talked a little bit about Mark Madden before and the kind of questionable things he said. One thing that he said kind of stuck out with me when you sent me a tweet earlier today. I know you didn't actually mean it, but you said, I hate this team. And something that Madden said is that it's an unlikable team for the most part. With the players that are unlikable, it's really frustrating to, watch them and root for them. And I wouldn't go so far as to say I hate rooting for them because of that, but it's really annoying, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, it really ruins it. Like, we're obviously Steelers fans, like, that's not going to change, and we're still always going to root for them no matter what, but, like these, just all the dramatics make it so hard to, like, want to like these guys, and, like, it just makes it hard. Like, it's funny you bring this up, because I was just thinking, like, this stuff is really making me get a bad taste for football. Like, I've been getting ready for hockey season. Like, hockey season and preseason. Like, all this drama has put a bad taste in my mouth for football. I haven't been as excited with it as I have in previous years.
I think that's a very good way of putting it. Doesn't help when your team starts 0-1-1 and gets shredded by a guy making his third career start, but I digress. We're going to look real quickly back through the NFL slate of games. I'm not going to go through every game, but I guess, Austin, you see some games you want to talk about real quick? Feel free to mention. I'm just going to start with the Ravens and Bengals on Thursday night. The Bengals looked impressive there. A.J. Green looked like a god in the first half, and the Bengals do hold on to win. So the Bengals now 2-0 in the division. Are they legit?
I don't think so. I don't think that the Bengals are legit. I think that they played the Colts. I know that they played the Colts, and I know that they played the Ravens. I don't think those teams are either of them are very good. So I think the Bengals are just like a mid-tier team. I think they're better than I expected coming into this year. I think they're like an 8-8 team, but I don't think that they're really better than that. What do you think?
That's kind of where I thought they were going to be this year, but I actually think they might be better. I'm not saying they'll make the playoffs, but they've given themselves a good chance, and time will tell. They've got the playmakers on defense. We already know that. Geno Atkins, Carlos Dunlap, to name a couple. And they've got A.J. Green on the outside. As long as Andy Dalton's upright and he can get it to Green, they'll be in a lot of games. So I'm not saying they're winning the division or anything, but they are a team to watch moving forward. I don't think they're a Super Bowl contender yet, though. What else? Is there a game you wanted to talk about quickly?
No, I don't think there's really another game I want to talk about besides that the Bills, I'm done rooting for the Bills. They're done. The Bills suck. The Bills are terrible. I mean, we knew this, but I gave them one last shot.
I got a couple.
They blew it.
I got a couple for you. There has been another tie in the NFL. The Vikings and Packers have tied once more, showing the idiocy of the NFL for shortening the overtime length and for even having ties at all. Now we're 2 games into the season and 4 teams have a tie on their record. How cool is that?
It's not cool. It's not cool at all.
Agreed.
I don't like
it's
the
awful.
ties as much.
It's absolutely awful. Austin, does anyone feel worse right now on the planet than Zane Gonzalez, the Browns' former kicker?
Maybe Daniel Carlson, the Vikings' former kicker now. But other than that, no.
For those who don't know, the Browns had a chance to. What was it? Didn't he miss an extra point that would have tied it, and then he missed a chance to win the game? Is that what it was?
Yeah, that's exactly what happened.
Okay, so 2 crucial kicks that he missed, and because of that, the Browns did not win at the Mercedes-Benz Superdome, despite a heroic effort by Tyrod Taylor, I might add. That was a fantastic throw down the field on a desperation 4th down that ended up in the end zone. And right when that ball was caught, I thought the Browns were going to win that game. I thought for sure the Browns were finally going to win, and then they go full Browns.
Michael Thomas just really is disgusting. I want to say that. Michael Thomas is probably my favorite receiver in the NFL, and he has 28 catches on 30 targets through 2 games. That is disgusting. I knew it. I kept going on Twitter this offseason about how Michael Thomas is going to finally crack the top 5 receivers, and because no one ever gave him respect going into this year. No one was giving him the respect. I thought he was a top 5 receiver, and everyone else was like, no, he hasn't earned it yet. He's showing it. I love Michael Thomas, man.
Eagles at Buccaneers. Ryan Fitzmagic to the rescue for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They defeat the defending Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles, and the Steelers get a full dose of them on Monday night. But until then, Ryan Fitzpatrick looks like the early MVP candidate, and if you saw his post-game press conference, he looks the part.
Oh, yeah. He looked exactly like
Conor McGregor.
What's his face from boxing?
Conor McGregor.
Oh, yeah, McGregor, yeah. But he deserves it, man. Every other year, Ryan Fitzpatrick has an amazing year, and then every other year, apart from that, he has a bad year. It's great year, bad year. Great year, bad year. Never stays constant, but it's always one of them.
I love Ryan Fitzpatrick. Fitzpatrick was one of the quarterbacks that I've followed throughout most of his entire career. His first year was 2005, same draft class as Aaron Rodgers. Fitzpatrick is the definition of a journeyman. His first NFL action, where he got starts, besides his rookie year, came with the Bengals in 2008, the Steelers Super Bowl season. I remember he started games in Buffalo. I actually went to a game between the Bills and Steelers in which Fitzpatrick threw a perfect pass to Stevie Johnson in overtime, but Johnson dropped it and then blamed God for dropping it. I don't know if you remember that. Did you remember that?
No, I don't remember him blaming God for dropping it.
In any case, Fitzpatrick's been around a while. He played for Tennessee, Houston, the Jets, and the Buccaneers now. I'm glad to see him doing this, and it makes me happy for him, and I don't know how much longer he's going to keep it up, but I mean, I kind of hope he does it next week, but who knows? I mean, I'm kind of glad for him. The old Amish rifle, or Fitzmagic. I forgot about the Amish rifle. That was his old nickname in Buffalo.
Oh.
Yep, yes indeed. That was his nickname. Oh.
Do you want to hear something stupid?
What? What is it?
Minkah Fitzpatrick of the Dolphins, the rookie, just filed for the patent on Fitzmagic, on the name Fitzmagic. Like, how are you gonna do that? Like, Ryan Fitzpatrick, he used to be known as the Amish rifle, as you said. But that's Ryan Fitzmagic. He owns that name. And honestly, I was so mad seeing that Minkah Fitzpatrick filed for it. It's because he's going to get the patent for it because he filed for it first. That sucks. That's stupid.
I just want to see those two because he plays for the Dolphins, right?
Yeah, he plays for the Dolphins.
Well, they won't play this year, but it'd be funny if they did and Fitzpatrick, Ryan Fitzpatrick lit him up. But in any case, the Jaguars defeated the New England Patriots at home. Blake Bortles, there was a time I texted you in the game when the Jaguars were up 24-3. They had run 11 rushing plays and had thrown the ball 33 times with Blake Bortles, and he had 4 touchdowns. Boy, I tell you what, if the Jaguars play that well, they're going to be hard to beat. Hard to beat.
Yep, I think they're the AFC Super Bowl favorite at the moment.
I agree with you. All right, let's move on to the Thursday night prediction. Jets at Browns, 8:20 p.m. The Browns are getting 3 points at home. Austin, is this the first time the Browns are victors for the first time since Christmas Eve 2016?
I think so. I think the Browns are going to cover their 3-point favorites, and I think that they could beat the Jets here. I think that they are going to be the better team here because they came close with the Saints. They tied the Steelers. I mean, maybe the Steelers are bad this year, which I could believe if you told me, but I still believe the Saints are like a really they're still a Super Bowl contender. So I think the Browns are actually better than I expected. It might be a 6-win team. So I'm going to say that they cover.
I agree with you. I think it's going to be tough. Myles Garrett against the rookie quarterback in Darnold. And I still think highly of Tyrod Taylor in this game. I always like the Thursday night team at home, so I'll take the Browns to cover. Let's wrap it up with some NFL news. What's going on?
Well, the Falcons are cursed this year as they lost their starting guard, Andy Levitre, for the year. Then, other than that, the big news probably that I think you'll probably want to have something to say, but is Josh Gordon has been traded to the Patriots in exchange for a conditional 5th-round pick. The condition is that if Gordon is inactive for 10 games, the Patriots get a 7th-round pick back. So that's really it. Just I called it as soon as Gordon got supposedly released. He was going to be released, and then teams were like, hey, I want that guy. I think the Browns just did themselves an injustice by not just trying to trade him and then first saying we're releasing him. But this is terrible. The Patriots had no receivers. They looked like they were actually going to be not a favorite for once, and they obviously lost bad to the Jaguars. And then this happens. Then the Browns decide, hey, if we're going down, everyone else is going down with us, and decided to just make the Patriots that much better. And then when they get Edelman back, it's going to be even more tragic. What do you have to say about that trade?
It just makes me really upset that the Steelers didn't beat the tar out of the Browns like they should have in Week 1. That's all I have to say.
Terrible, dude.
Also, is Pete Carroll does he have no self-awareness whatsoever? You know, last week, as I said, he criticized his quarterback for his play, and then today said that he's been pressing too much, trying to do too much on the field. What? Well, yeah, of course he is. He doesn't have a team around him.
He's losing it. Like, you don't address offensive line for like 3 years straight, and you just watch as Russell Wilson goes down and down and down, and he has to use his legs to escape all the pressure. I mean, after this game, Pete Carroll, he actually had a point, because even my Seahawks fan friend was saying he was holding it for too long, and I did watch the game, and I was like, all right, Russell Wilson's holding it for a little long. He trusts his offensive line too much, but, like, still, like, he doesn't have an option because his team is not, the brass for his team is not trying to help him. They're not trying to give him receivers. They're not trying to give him on the offensive line. Like, honestly, he has decent receivers. He just needs an offensive line. But, like, even then, either position could be upgraded easily. Doug Baldwin hasn't been, like, that great since, like, 3 years ago. Tyler Lockett, I've never been a fan of. He just got speed. I mean, he's an okay punt returner, but, like, other than that, he's not a great receiver. Like, I mean, maybe their tight end, Will Dissly, is breaking out, but, like, just, I don't know what goes on in Pete's head that he thinks that Russell Wilson is the problem at all. Like, you're going to lose Russell Wilson over comments like this. I wouldn't want to stay with a team where I'm being blamed when the rest of my team is literal cheeks.
I mean, yeah. Think about it. The Seahawks are just another one of those NFL teams that are pretty much their quarterback, and that's it, which, I mean, that's pretty much what the Colts are. That's kind of what the Packers are. Right?
Yeah, that's really it. That's the best way to describe it. They're just their quarterback, and that can only take you so far.
All right, Austin, we're up against it. You do have a quick announcement to make, though, right?
I do have a quick announcement. The TSC shop, I got into contact with them, so let's just be on the lookout for a giveaway soon. We are planning to do, it should be, I don't have all the details yet, but just check out tscshop.com for the best Steelers, Pirates, and Penguins memorabilia. They got some really cool stuff. I've got some things for there. I got John his signed Bobby Foster jersey from there. They got some really cool stuff. So go check out tscshop.com. And, yeah, that's really it.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening today. If you have any questions about the show, email us at strongerthansteelpodcast@gmail.com. Check out our website, strongerthansteelnfl.blogspot.com. Check out TSC Shop. What was the website again, Austin?
tscshop.com.
All right. Check us out on Twitter at @stronger_steel. Check us out on SoundCloud and Facebook at Stronger Than Steel Podcast. We're under the same name on YouTube. And our Instagram is at Stronger_Steel_NFL. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us again. And we're hoping for a better week 3 for the Pittsburgh Steelers. But until then, thank you as always for listening to the Stronger Than Steel Podcast. Have a great night.
Have a good night.
You have been listening to Stronger Than Steel Podcast. Thank you for joining us today, and don't forget to check out our website listed in the description below.